Hello, my name is Yuri Kofner. I'm a young researcher from Munich, Germany, and I lived 10 years in Moscow in Russia. And I would like to start a new blog here where I would like to talk about interesting topics on German economic policies, European economic integration, and also Eurasian integration within the Eurasian Economic Union, which is a trade and integration bloc of 5 former post-Soviet states, revolving mainly around Russia. Why are those topics? Because this is my research focus, and because I hope I can bring up some interesting alternative views to the mainstream thoughts on this, but also which would be valuable and interesting to everyone. And the first topic which I would like to talk about is this new proposal by the European Commission in June 2020 this year. The European Commission came up with a white paper, which is a euphemism for proposal, on a new mechanism, a new legal instrument to counteract potential unfair competitive advantages which foreign non-EU companies might have on the common single market. So the EU is a single market to a large extent, and the European Commission takes care that the member states within this single market all have equal competition rights and do not use their own state subsidies to gain unfair competitive advantages. Now, foreign companies, not from the EU, let's say from China, they might receive state aid, state subsidies, or other forms of support, which might make them have unfair competitive advantages on the European market and make them able to buy out European companies, to provide goods and services at prices that European companies cannot be competitive with, and participate in public procurement in the European Union at the cost of European companies. And obviously this initiative came over fears that this large illiberal state capitalist economy as China could use the support it gives to its own companies, both state-owned and private, to buy out and to outcompete European companies, and thus pose a threat arguably to European economic sovereignty, European values, and European security issues. And also there is some merit, I would have to admit, to this new proposal. So before that, if this out-competition, unfair competition is really an issue, then the European Commission didn't have an instrument before that how to deal with this issue. Now it would have, and it would be quite effective, ostensibly, because it could look into public procurement, it could look into acquisitions of EU companies, it could look into foreign subsidies in general and the market distortions created therefore, and issue regressive measures. It's directed not only formally, it's not directed only against China, but against all foreign countries, so that's potentially a good thing. It's directed not only against state companies, but against all companies, private and state-owned, which receive foreign subsidies. And it has a very low threshold of only 200,000 euros, which is the threshold of state subsidies within the EU, over which the control takes place. And it also, the European Commission of this new proposal that puts forward has an ace up its sleeve, because it puts the burden on proving that you do not receive state aid on the side of the producers, of the suppliers, of the companies, of the exporters, the foreign ones, and not on the side of the European bureaucracy. Because, for example, before that, the European Commission always had to prove that, for example, with non-tariff barriers, that China is doing something wrong here, and we have to redress this. Now it is the companies themselves who have to prove that they do not receive state aid. If they do not prove it, they will get punishment if they do not provide any information. So this is very convenient for the European Commission. So yes, this new initiative has some merit, I would agree, and it makes some sense in the way that it's put forward, that it's designed. However, there are certain very important issues, I think, which need to be talked about before the European Commission and the European member states really implement this new instrument. So the plan is to implement this new legal instrument by 2021 already. And the first issue I would have is that, okay, so this instrument is not officially, but formally addressed against potential unfair, ostensible unfair competition by Chinese companies and Chinese economic influence. But some researchers, for example, from the German IFO Institute and the Kiel Institute for the the World Economy, I mean, they have come forward with papers where they argue, first of all, China is not such a big influence over, does not have such a big influence over the European economy. And I would like to quote a paper by Knör, I hope I pronounced this rightly, Knörich and Mietang, and where they say that Chinese foreign direct investment into the European Union in 2017 amounted to 86 billion US dollars, which sounds like a lot. However, at the same time, the sum is dwarfed, absolutely dwarfed by investments from the United States into the European Union of 3.6 trillion United States dollars. So, arguably, this idea that China is buying out European companies at large is not really true, at least for now. And the economic influence over the European economy from the United States is much larger. Now, of course, the argument can be, yes, but the United States is our ally, and the United States is a liberal economy. And my answer or my response to this would be, really? Is the United States an ally of Europe? Are the United States this liberal economy? Well, for example, state aid in the United States in between 2014 and 2017 amounted at least to 3.2 billion US dollars in federal grants. Energy-related tax preferences amounted to 18.2 billion US dollars in 2016 alone, and according to the OECD, cumulated governmental, financial, and non-financial support to American farmers totaled at almost 40 billion US dollars in 2017. So, yes, the United States might be a more liberal, more open economy, but still, they also engage in state aid, and and they have an influence over the European economy. And to me, honestly, my personal opinion is, I'm not sure if this much influence is less an issue than this, or more or less an issue than the influence China might have, Russia might have, or other countries might have through economic cooperation. And the second issue is that the Kiel Institute for the World Economy has looked into state support or not state support, but general into the economic export performance of over 170,000 Chinese firms engaged in manufacturing, and they have come to the scientific conclusion that there is no I want to be precise about this, so I would like to quote this. So they came to the conclusion that that's a quote, it is questionable whether production-related subsidies have a large role to play in explaining Chinese firms' export performance. This is the quote. So basically, we cannot prove that state aid and state subsidies from the Chinese government really make the difference to make Chinese companies more competitive than, let's say, European companies. So if you if we argue that they are more competitive, that they outcompete European companies, then this research shows that it might be not due to because they receive state aid. It's just because they are better. Okay. Well, at least that's the issue we have to look into before deciding to introduce anti-subsidy regressive measures. More in general, the European Union has been a champion of certain values, for example, free trade and non-interference, or at maximum non-interference into the own economy. And this is a clear interventionist tool which the European Union is proposing. It's a clear intervention into the market economy, and it will clearly raise prices for the affected sectors, and it will lead to a welfare loss for European consumers. So the question is, do we really want that? Yes, other companies, foreign companies, get a bit, or they increase their market share at the cost of European companies. Fair enough, that's bad, potentially. But also, on the other side, the European consumers receive cheaper and better goods, potentially. So, do we really want to get rid of this? It's the free market, kind of. And also, is this Bible verse which says, he that is without sin should throw the first stone. So what I mean with this, the European Union should think twice before blaming and punishing other regions, other countries for using state aid, because the European Union is no stranger to subsidies and to state aid. And only in 2018, accumulated state aid in the EU amounted to 210 billion United States dollars. And I think over now the Corona crisis and the ongoing support measures for the European economies, I think this aid will increase, if not tenfold, then by a lot. And I think it's questionable if right now is the right moment to point a finger at other countries that are likely to do the same or do the same, because everyone is using state aid. And now this is the next point which I would like to come to. I think it's obvious that if the European Union implements its own mechanism to regress foreign state aid, then the countries, the foreign regions, they are very likely to respond to this with their own retaliatory mechanism. They will say, okay, if you want to punish us for using state aid to help our businesses, we can do the same, because you support your businesses. So if you punish us, we will punish you. And basically that will mean that there will be a new front in this global trade war, which is already going on. So already the global trade globalization is being reduced, is suffering under this new wave of protectionism, which by the way started before Trump already during the Obama era, but that's another topic. But now we have this trade war which is going on between the United States and China, between the United States and the European Union, between many countries, which especially during the Corona crisis are thinking about putting their production back into their home territories. And now the European Union, especially the European Union, which should be a champion of free trade, is now pushing this new proposal, this new protectionist mechanism. And this will lead to a response in protectionist measures from the affected countries. And there are several more issues under this. Firstly, if the European Commission, if Brussels wants to be fair and honest, it has to introduce this mechanism not only against Chinese companies, but also against potentially American companies and Russian companies and Latin American companies and so on. And so all those regions might, I think, are likely to respond with a retaliatory mechanism. And the question is, does the European Union really want to risk a new trade war or another front in the trade war with the United States? I mean, there is really a big issue going on over state support, state subsidies for Airbus and Boeing, which is kind of resolved during the WTO, but still kind of like an issue. So the question is Brussels willing to provoke Trump or Sleepy Joe with this kind of new protectionist measure? And also, is the European Union prepared to receive retaliatory measures from China or other trading partners? And I think it's a bad idea, actually. I mean, it will lead to a new spiral of protectionism. And to prove this, I have conducted two small simulations using a partial equilibrium model, an economic trade model, one in the sector for aluminium trade, and if the European Union will use this regressive measure against Chinese companies which receive state aid in their sector, which is, if I'm not taken wrong, is about 1.2% of their total revenues, so not a lot, but still. Then if they will use regressive measures against the Chinese aluminium industry, which exports to the European Union, then Chinese aluminium exports to the European Union will be decreased by 2.4%. European sales will increase, domestic sales by 0.1%. The European Union will make more money through those kind of punitive payments Chinese aluminium producers have to pay, which would amount to 24, 25 million US dollars. However, again, not only would Chinese aluminium producers make a loss, a revenue loss, but also European consumers would make a loss, and that loss would be 31.6 million US dollars. And also another sector I have looked at is the agri-food sector. So also an issue with subsidies is that it's very hard to come by total estimates on state aid, state subsidies. Every government, every state is trying to hide the subsidies it gives, of course, to its companies, and that's why it's very difficult to find like total numbers or even worse percentages, like state aid in relation to revenues or in relation to a certain market. But fortunately, the OECD publishes data on state support in the agricultural sector, and based on this data, I have produced a simulation, and I tried to see what would happen if the European Union would introduce this kind of anti-foreign subsidy mechanism against Chinese farmers, and what also would happen if the Chinese government decided to introduce a retaliatory anti-subsidy mechanism against European farmers in response to that. And I won't now repeat all of my research and my results because it would be a lot of boring numbers, but basically both would lose out. Yes, they would gain some money through punitive payments. However, European and Chinese consumers would lose out in the end. European and Chinese producers would lose out, and that would be sums of about 2.4 to 2.4 billion US dollars in the agri-food sector in the European Union and China respectively. So big loss. So in conclusion, I think the European Union and its member states really should think about introducing this kind of new protectionist tool, because it will likely to increase consumer prices, it will likely to lead to a net welfare loss for the European Union, and it will most certainly lead to a new trade war or a new front in the ongoing trade war, diminishing already struggling globalization.